The greatest energy security challenge in history. Warnings of global shortages as both Iran and the US blockade the Strait of Hormuz. Talks between Israel and Lebanon will begin, but Hezbollah warns it's a trap. And while Trump insists peace talks with Iran are still alive, are both sides moving any closer? Here's what you need to know.
I can tell you that we've been called by the other side. They'd like to make a deal very badly. Very badly.
US President Donald Trump says a military blockade of Iranian ports is now in effect. But it's unclear what exactly has changed. US Central Command says it's set up a security perimeter in the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea and will prevent any vessels leaving Iran's ports from exiting. So far, that hasn't been tested, but it could involve the US Navy physically boarding oil tankers headed to China, putting the US and China in direct confrontation, and the US wants it to pressure Iran to back down. But China is measuring its response. It says all parties need to remain calm and exercise restraint. But restraint is in short supply. Iran's military says it will attack any US naval vessel that even comes close to the strait, while Trump says Iranian attack ships that try to breach his blockade will be eliminated. So this leaves the Strait of Hormuz in limbo yet again. The US says it won't stop anyone else from passing through non-Iranian waters, but that's not going to convince most vessels to even try. It still needs to prove there's safe passage through the strait that doesn't involve coordinating with the IRGC, and that it's been able to remove any sea mines that Iran might have placed here. Germany's shipping giant Hapag-Lloyd says as long as the threat of mines still exists, passage through this part of the strait is impossible. And US allies have made it clear they want no part in this. Britain and France say they won't be drawn into the conflict and will instead host a summit to build a coalition to reopen the strait once the war ends.
My guide from the start of this conflict has always been our national interest. That's why we stayed out of the war and why we continue to stay out of the war.
The world's biggest economic bodies are warning countries to stop hoarding energy supplies. Leaders from the IMF, the World Bank, and the International Energy Agency say despite the release of 400 million barrels of crude from global reserves in March to ease energy prices, some countries have instead added that extra oil to their own reserves and imposed export restrictions. They say the world faces its worst energy security crisis in history, and the shortage of oil, natural gas, fertilizers, petrochemicals, and helium will soon be felt by everyone.
Every country today in this crisis situation, if they want to be proved that they are a responsible member of the international community, they shouldn't put this export restrictions, which is not good for the markets.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif says talks to end the conflict are still alive, announcing a visit to Saudi Arabia and Turkey. The initiative between Islamabad, Riyadh, Cairo, and Ankara is trying to build on progress made during Saturday's talks between the US and Iran. The sticking point appears to be uranium enrichment, according to officials Al Jazeera has spoken to. Iran is offering to halt enrichment for 5 years. The US wants no enrichment for 20.
We did make some progress in the negotiation. The big question from here on out is whether the Iranians will have enough flexibility, whether the Iranians will accept the critical things that we need to see in order for things to get done.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is hosting Israeli and Lebanese officials for talks in Washington on Tuesday, as Israel continues to intensify its invasion in southern Lebanon, attempting to pressure Lebanon's government into forcing Hezbollah to disarm. Hezbollah's leaders say the talks are futile, while Israel continues to occupy Lebanese land.
نحن نرفض المفاوضات مع الكيان الإسرائيلي الغاصب. هذه المفاوضات عبثية.
That's it from me today. Stay with us on Al Jazeera for all your updates in the war on Iran.